Hello, everybody, and good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the globe. We're very excited to be here today speaking about how to enhance deliverability post the new standard guidelines. And I'm here today with Matthew Vernhout, who is the principal email advisor with Email Industries with over 20 years experience in email deliverability. Thank you for being here with us today, Matthew.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. And Surya Paul, who's the deliverability expert here at Mailmodo with 10 years of experience in email deliverability and lifecycle marketing. Thank you, Surya, for being here.
Glad to be here, Mariana.
Nice. Okay, and we're going to kick out strong with the first theme that we're going to talk about, which is the new center guidelines. We want to know what's going on and how we actually uh, adapt what we've been doing so far to not have them impact us so much. So, can you guys explain to us the new center guidelines and how they were introduced by Gmail and by Yahoo? And what are the primary changes that marketers need to be aware of?
Sure. Yeah. In October of last year, in October 2023, jointly Google and Yahoo announced that they were going to be implementing some changes for senders. So you can see here on the slide, primarily they're going to start enforcing authentication. So if you are sending email to Google and Yahoo and basically anywhere else, they're going to say implement SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And I put here aligned DKIM with the slide, mainly because some providers that are sending mail on behalf of commercial senders don't enable you to do SPF aligned, but they do enable DKIM alignment. So that's the primary one. If you can make DKIM work and DMARC, you're fine. But the requirement really was a minimum policy of P equals none. So basically set up DMARC so you can start to receive the data. And the guidance was updated to say, implement the aggregate reporting, which is the RUA tag. So a lot of people went out and said, DMARC P equals none, and then didn't do anything else. But they didn't actually implement the RUA tag. So that would be something I would highly recommend if you're not doing it now. Yahoo did update their guidance to say you should be receiving reports, as well as communication over TLS encrypted channels. So when you're sending email between two networks, it should be encrypted during that transit. One-click unsubscribe was also added. So a lot of email platforms were implementing the list unsubscribe header, but now they've come out and said, we also want you to implement the additional one-click unsubscribe header, which is tagged here as RFC 8058. There's a lot of confusion around this right now in regards to people think this also impacts the link in the content of their message. That link, there was no policy change. It was really just add this additional feature within your header of your email so that when you're in the mail client, you might see like a click here to unsubscribe button instead of a report spam button or alongside of a report spam button, just to make it easier for consumers to stop receiving mail they're no longer interested in. The last piece that really came out of this, that's probably one of the more important pieces, is that your spam complaint rate needs to stay under 0.3%. So, looking at that, it's been said this is over a period of time. What that period of time is has never really been clarified. I like to look at spam complaint rate over, a week and a month period and sort of see which way things are trending. But you definitely want to stay under that 0.3% complaint rate in order to ensure that your delivery is not going to be impacted. Those are really the big changes that started in February and sort of have been rolling out over time, right up until this month when the list unsubscribe header implementation came into force. So, they've tried to roll it out in a really nice, smooth fashion for people, give people time to do development and get things up and running. And I still think there's a lot of people scrambling to meet the criteria listed here.
Nice. Thank you so much for showing this. Yes, it makes things a lot clearer. And actually, I have a question for Surya now about the Postmaster compliance dashboard and how it functions. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what are the key metrics and indicators on the compliance dashboard that we should be aware of?
Sure. So right now, what has happened is, as Matt was pointing out, right? Gmail and Yahoo have become more resilient towards spam complaints and certain elements in the header. So they have essentially become more user friendly than marketer friendly. It's not that they weren't earlier; they were always more user friendly than marketer friendly, but now they have put out thresholds for marketers to understand how important it is to comply by certain metrics. So that's why they have this entire compliance dashboard, uh, which is essentially something which you can view if you click at the top uh, of your Postmaster tool. So when you open Postmaster, Google Postmaster, you will see a pop-up message wherein uh, Google will be giving you a link to the compliance dashboard, and over there they will be analyzing your SPF and DCAM authentication. If you're passing SPF, if you're passing DCAM, and then the from header alignment, which is essentially like if your from email address is aligning with the mail from domain or the return path domain or the envelope domain, and then there is DMARC authentication if your domain is complying with the DMARC protocols. And as Matt pointed out, encryption is also like something which has become mandatory. um, that's essentially because there are marketeers out there who kind of disable TLS so that the emails are delivered at a quicker rate, but that's not the way to go. And obviously, end of the day, the user reported spam rate, right? Because you have to have a threshold less than 0.3%. It was always out there, but they didn't define a threshold as such. And this is basically a lot of people have come and asked me, like, is it just one spike which is going to destroy my domain reputation? But it's not just one spike which can destroy your reputation. It's essentially uh, the spam complaint rate gauged over a period of time, over a week, over 30 days. If you're consistently clocking a very high spam complaint rate, then your domain will be up for a plunge, right? And you will see a red bar over here. So these are the main metrics when it comes to the compliance dashboard. And yeah, that's about it.
Great. Yeah, Matthew. And would you have anything to add to that? And actually, I have a second question that I wanted to ask you about how can we make this a little bit more tactical to everybody? Do you happen to have like a checklist or something that people can go through so that they can actually meet all the new compliance requirements?
Yeah, so the previous slide is sort of the checklist of requirements, right, in regards to implementing SPF, DKIM, DMARC. The best part about the DMARC piece, when you are receiving the aggregate reports, it's going to tell you all the things that this dashboard is also going to tell you. So it's going to tell you if authentication is failing, right? That's going to be sort of the prime indicator. You'll see that red check mark or red X, I suppose, will be next to SPF and DKIM. You'll see header alignment or non-alignment. So you'll be able to actually use that data to go back and fix all of these problems that's you're showing listed here. So, I spend a lot of time working with clients to fix SPF records, to get DKIM implemented with their platforms, and then to move from just a DMARC none policy eventually into a quarantine, or should they choose to, a reject policy. There's a lot of reasons to migrate forward. Currently, it's not a requirement, but in a year, two, maybe Google and Yahoo decide having a P equals none policy is not good enough anymore. And now you need to move to a quarantine policy. So it's not just a set and forget. It's definitely not something you want to just do once. You want to build a program that will move you forward and ensure that you're protecting your consumers and your domain. Part of this is to benefit the sender as well, in order to protect their domain from spoofing or phishing or other fraudulent uses without their knowledge.
I would say P equal to none exists only because of the beta testing environment, right? As of now. Otherwise,
it gives you the opportunity to fix all your problems without impacting your mail.
Correct.
Great. Awesome. So all of actually to do the green ticking, is there any other tip that people should follow?
So I think first off, set up Google Postmaster. So if you don't have Google Postmaster set up, you can go to postmaster.google.com, put your domain in. They'll give you a text record with which you need to set up and approve that you own the domain. Once that starts to come in, you'll start to see access to this data. Usually it's 48 hours delayed. So if you set it up today, you'll start to see things likely on Monday for data coming in as of tomorrow. So there's a bit of a delay to the data, but you're going to start to see specifically where you're having problems, what your complaint rate is at Google, what your current domain and IP reputation are, whether your mail is encrypted or not, whether your mail is fully authenticated or not. And then this dashboard basically becomes your checklist of things to do.
Cool. Okay. Yes. Okay. So they are making it easier for us, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think that's something, a lot of people asked me as well, is like, why is this happening, right? It's happening because spam is such a problem that it's impacting the user base of both Google and Yahoo's networks and all the other mailbox providers for sure. And what they're trying to do is enable their platforms to properly classify, is this mail that people want? Is this mail that people don't want? And it's an effort to make their user experience better, which in turn, as marketers, we should also want to make sure we're giving good user experiences to our mutual customers. And in order to do that, we need to do these things as well.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense. And I like it because actually the way to see it is, we all have to be better, do better, like evolve, and I think that's also, it's kind of like a little push, but if we see it that way, it feels a lot like they're trying to help in a way as well. So yeah, thank you for that perspective. And now we're going to jump into this second theme about the strategies for data segmentation. And here I kind of wanted us to go into a little more detail in industry per industry. So if you understand that there is a difference in segmentation or in different techniques that we can use from industry to industry, that this is the right moment to mention those. So my first question there is, how do segmentation techniques change from industry to industry?
Suri, you want to start with this?
Yeah.
Sure. Like when it comes to segmentation or email warm up, right? Like, especially when you're warming up a domain name for a particular industry, I always compare it with, like showing up for an interview or showing up for your first date. You have to basically present the best version of your mailing list, essentially. So, how you present the best version of your mailing list varies from industry to industry. So when it comes to e-commerce, it would be, like your previous clickers maybe. When it comes to the job board industry, it would be your new subscribers. These would be having the maximum affinity, essentially. So just give me a minute. I'll present a few industry-wise segmentation strategies.
Sure. Yeah. While you're getting that ready, I think there are some very basic things that you can do for authenticate or for segmentation as well, right? They were on that previous page. Gender, geographic location, possibly age of your subscribers. Those are very specific things that you can look at when you're moving forward for basic segmentation, right? A good example is clothing retail. Sending me email about women's clothing is probably not going to drive me to click too frequently. Maybe around holidays or birthdays for my wife, but not necessarily throughout the rest of the year. Sending me gender-specific clothing, especially if you know the gender of the recipient, is going to drive a lot more engagement from people. Moving into some of the other segmentation topics, geographic is a big one. A lot of senders that I've worked with in the past want their message to be in the inbox at 9 a.m. But there's 5-6 time zones in North America. 9 a.m. for me is a lot different than 9 a.m. on the West Coast. So, looking at geographical region, you may segment your list based on time zone. You may segment it based on city. You can get really into the weeds and segment, if there's a natural disaster in an area, you may segment that section of your list and say, don't send them email right now because they've got bigger things to deal with. So you could start very basic and then iterate and evolve from there into last click, product refill, product refresh, companion products. That's always a big one that I like as a segment. Think about it from the point of view, you're selling mattresses, right? How many times do you buy a mattress, right? Once every 5, once every 10 years, you're buying a mattress. So there's a really long sales cycle, but you need pillows, you need bed sheets, you need duvet covers, you need duvets, you need, all of the accessories that go with the bed, maybe more frequently. And that's a companion purchase cycle that you could then use as your segmentation.
And now you know the size of the bat of your customer to make it
Absolutely, right?
more relevant.
Exactly. Use that data that you have to segment and target.
Cool. Thank you for that. So you were going to jump into strategies that go from industry to industry. Was that it?
Correct. So one piece is the fintech industry, which is something uh, we actively cater to at Mailmodo, and there are three funnels basically which I broadly look at. One is people who have signed up but not started paying you, right? They are the tofu leads essentially, and then there are the paying customers, and then there are customers who either have stopped paying you or have been in the wait period beyond the certain threshold for evaluation stage in the fintech industry. So in the fintech industry, what we have seen is the evaluation phase is not more than 1 month. So if the customer is in the evaluation phase for more than 1 month, you can pretty much put him or her in the churn funnel. So when it comes to the tofu leads, you basically send them automation nudges, KYC completion kind of emails to push them further down the funnel. When it comes to paying customers, you essentially cross sell, send them product updates, send them market updates, and keep them engaged basically. And finally, the churn customers, you kind of give them certain win back offers to come back to you. So it's never a one size fits all communication. What Matt was discussing was, further delving into these funnels and looking at gender, age, and hyper personalization of communication according to each and every sub segments of these funnels. But when you're looking at the broad segmentation, right, you're looking at these three funnels essentially, and deep dive into these funnels and further segment them based on gender, age, and other attributes. So more the attributes that you have in your data set, better the segmentation and more accurate the messaging. Then we have another industry which we cater to, which is the edtech industry. I think in the edtech industry, the primary problem marketeers try to solve for is reducing the drop off between the sign up and conversion, because like in edtech, a lot of people are in the evaluation stage because there are so many edtech companies out there right now. So when it comes to edtech, I would say the wait period, the evaluation phase would be up to 3 months, maybe, as much as the automobile industry. Like you give them time to evaluate, but in the course of that evaluation, you give them important information about your brand, trying to push them down the funnel. Then the paying customers, you send them quizzes, you send them polls, and the thing with uh, mail modo is you can have interactive emails, um, amp widgets in the form of quizzes and polls, which you can send within the email itself, and let the customer spend more time within the email. And then finally, you have the churn customers, uh, who either have crossed the wait period, the evaluation period of 3 months, or who have stopped paying you. So you essentially send them some win back offers, and basically, like some product updates about new courses that you have launched. Then we come to another industry, which is the B2B SaaS industry. Over here, also, we have three similar segments. One is tofu leads, people who are in the evaluation phase. And when it comes to B2B SaaS, because, like I have also evaluated multiple B2B SaaS products, I am not in the wait period for more than 1 month. If I'm not converted within 1 month, you should consider me as churn, right? And um, dealing with the type of communication, dealing with, like the type of messaging is very important over here. When it comes to tofu leads, you should be sending testimonials, how to use the product, videos, case studies, and maybe send them a few freebies in the form of resources, right, which would be otherwise gated on your website. Then when it comes to paying customers, you send them newsletters. Your newsletters should basically, stand out from the rest. And then finally, you have churn customers. You send them important product updates. Just an example: if mail mode today is only email marketing, say we were to delve into the omni-channel uh, zone, right? Like, as soon as we did, we would communicate with all our customers, informing them that, hey, we are omni-channel right now. So maybe a 10 or 20% of those churned customers could come back, because maybe the reason why they churned was, um, we are not omni-channel, right? So important product updates, but with minimal frequency, should be the type of communication to the churned customers in B2B SaaS. Then finally, we come to e-commerce or D2C, right? Over here, how I look at it is, in terms of email activity and platform activity. By platform activity, I mean, like either interaction on the website or interaction on the app if you're app heavy. So if you are email active and platform active, that is, you're actively opening the emails and you're having multiple sessions on the app or on the website, right? You should consider me as a loyal customer, and you should send me emails as frequently as possible, and you should include me as part of the regular mailing list without sending me any offers, because any which way I'm coming on the platform. Then there is email active and platform inactive. These are folks who are subscribed to you, who know that you're sending emails, but somewhere down the line they're not converting to a paying customer, right? They have transacted with you once, but they are not very active on the platform. How do you win them? Maybe throw in some offers like 10% off or 15% off. Then there is another cohort which is email inactive and platform active, right? These are users who are not opening your emails, but they're engaging with you. Maybe, they're young people, Gen Zs, who tend to not check their emails so much, at least um in this part of the world. Uh, so how do you win them back? You maybe send them enticing offers on other channels and encourage them to check their emails. Maybe send them a push notification saying, hey, we have mailed you a 15% off voucher, and they will be compelled to check their emails. So you automatically convert them to email active users, because they will be expecting such offers on email as a channel. And finally, you have email active and platform, uh, email inactive and platform inactive. These are folks who are not engaging with you neither on email as a channel nor on your platform. How do you win them back? Maybe BOGO offers, but communicate with them as, uh, the frequency of communication should be as minimal as possible, right? So this is uh, this is how segmentation is in a nutshell, married with what Matt just walked us through, which is hyper personalization based on gender, age, and geography.
Thank you, Surya. I love how it's like how we can actually, I mean, every brand or every business can have their own understanding of how they want to get in touch with people and how they want to make themselves more relevant to their audience. But there's also like uh, kind of like a fundamental strategy that can be applied to most businesses, and they can kind of use that as a base and then build on top of that. So thank you for going through that with us.
One thing
Matthew,
I
would you
wanted
like?
to
Yeah.
add, one thing I wanted to add, and I thought it was actually a really great point that Surya said very quickly, was the idea of reducing frequency as people become more disengaged, right? You may be sending email on a daily basis to your hyper engaged, most active users. But that bucket of people that's in your sort of least active group, you may only be sending them a monthly status update just to say, like, here's our new features this month and nothing else, or a survey or something, very sort of different than your normal communications, in an effort to move them back into your active bucket.
Awesome. Thank you. And what about the warm up phase? We know how important that phase is as well to guarantee deliverability. So I would love to know if there is, if you guys have a tip or a tactic that you always implement and always work out.
Yeah, I think we have slides for this. I put together a slide.
Nice. And I must say about the slides, what's with the awesome illustrations? Where do they come from?
This is part of our corporate culture. Is we
Oh,
love all like little creatures, and if you go back actually one slide before this one as well.
I
Sorry,
love that so much.
you were right. You were in the right slide. My bad. Um, so segmentation and warm up go hand in hand, right?
Mhm.
Just looking at how do you actually warm up. So say you're moving platforms, or you have a domain that has had a poor reputation. You're going to think about, how do I rebuild the reputation of this domain? The processes work in a fairly similar way. So you want to take your most active, most engaged people first. So people who are opening, people who are clicking on your email, people who are super engaged, and target them in sort of segment A. And then you want to send those groups the messages first, because they're going to be those that are super hyper excited about your emails. They're going to want to be the ones that click and give the positive indication of the messages that you're sending to the mailbox providers to say, yes, this is stuff I want. Then you can look at segment B and add in those who are maybe slightly less engaged, or have only engaged in the last couple of weeks. Then you kind of just grow outwards from your most engaged, slightly less engaged, least engaged. And then when you're doing warm up, one of the things that I find works really well is you only target your last 90-day engaged audience. If you go beyond that, you're getting into that group of people that you should be retargeting differently, and trying to do win back on, as opposed to warm up. So taking those sort of 3-month active users, targeting them first, and on the next page, this is where I was going in the wrong direction. I talk about sort of some volumes that you may want to consider when you're doing warm up. So if we could just skip to the next page. Looking here, this works really well for a lot of brands. So you start with like 1,000 recipients, especially if you're migrating platforms, and then grow about 30% a day. And then usually by the end of the month, you're in that range of, a little over 1 million, 1.25 million messages a day capable, right? Not everyone has lists that big, but you're looking at sort of that 30-day window going from virtually nothing to well over 1 million messages a day. And as you grow, you're growing in a very controlled, sort of slow fashion. Mailbox providers want that. You may need to look and tweak based on individual mailbox providers as well. For example, Gmail is much more forgiving in regards to the volume you're sending at the beginning, and Yahoo and Hotmail want you to send much lower volumes. So when I say 1,000 recipients, it's representative of 1,000 recipients based on the makeup of your list, which could be 50% Gmail, 10% Yahoo, 10% Hotmail, and then the rest is whatever else is on your list. You have this sort of gradual ramp up over a period of time, and this is how you do warm up. There are lots of different strategies. If you search on the web, someone might say start at 100 messages a day and grow. Others might say start at 5,000 a day and grow. There's not one right answer, and the process you follow could depend on the tactic, right? If it's a brand new domain, brand new subscribers, brand new, like everything, you're going to want to start really low. If it's reputation rebuilding, you may want to dial back to 1,000 and start over again. So work with a delivery consultant is what I would say. Work with your mailbox or your ESP to determine what the best option for your domain is when it comes to either a new warm up or a reputation repair. But this tactic has worked consistently very well for several years.
Matt, just a follow-up question. In terms of age of domain, right? Like, what would you recommend to the audience? Like, what would be a healthy age to start with? Like
Yeah.
I've heard, yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I've heard different answers, like 45 days, 30 days, 6 months. Some people want to wait out 6 months before starting off. So, what's the actual
Yeah.
answer?
I mean, I think I would say a minimum 30 days.
Minimum 30 days.
Um, right there is the idea of reputation lists out there called like Day Old Bread, for example. It's one of the reputation lists, and what it does is it lists new domains, and it breaks them by like new in the last week, new in the last 2 weeks, new in the last month, sort of thresholds. And
Right.
clearly the older the better. So if you have a
Older the
domain that
better.
you've been using, your corporate domain, you've been using it for 10 years, use subdomains off that. That domain has an established history, it has an established reputation. You're going to want to use that. But if you're starting from scratch and you want to buy a new domain to start doing email, then you should rest it in the 30, 45, 60 day range for sure. Put a web page on it, get some traffic to it.
Got it.
Don't just send from a domain that has no web page. That's the fastest way you're going to get blocked and blow up your warm up. And even if it's a matter of you redirect the domain to your corporate website so that it has a landing page, there are several mailbox providers out there that will look and say, does this domain have a landing page? Does it make sense? Does it look like it's going to be sending consent-based email? If there are problems, and spam researchers do this as well. Spamhaus is one of those organizations that they will look and say, does this domain make sense? How old is the domain? Should it be sending the volume of mail that it's sending? Right, a new domain is not going to have 1 million subscribers typically.
Got it.
So
Awesome. And how about strategies for lower user-generated spam complaints? Like, how can we lower those complaints? So I have a question for actually for you, Surya, first. Besides segmentation, what other tips do you have for reducing spam complaints?
Right. So, the copy and the way you design the email form an integral part of uh, how the users perceive your emails. Generally, I recommend users to follow the IDA model of marketing, wherein you grab the attention, interest, desire, and then finally get the user to, click on the CTA. It should not be super salesy. The subject line should be more personalized. There should be a very prominent unsubscribe button. If your unsubscribe is not prominent enough, users who don't like the emails uh, would end up reporting to spam. So these are the basic three tips that I have. In terms of copywriting, the copy should be pandering to the audience you're sending. So for example, like if you're communicating with a Gen Z audience, you can have more woke content sent out. If you're communicating with millennials, or maybe like a higher age group, it should be more professional, right? And it should resonate with the branding of your product, right? And it should not be super salesy. It should not just reek of offers, right? There should be enough. The readability should be top notch. So I've seen a lot of marketeers when they have multiple CTAs, right? How they go about designing the email is one CTA atop the other. That's the worst way to design the emails. Literally, you should have a zigzag model wherein like so that people who are reading from left to right can like navigate through the CTAs in a very smooth way, right? So all these factors count. The average time spent by a user, if the user is interested in your email, is about 8 seconds. If the user is not interested, it's about 3 seconds. So within that 8 seconds, right, you have to sell your product. So you have to kind of buy the user attention by informing them about what you're selling, and then finally coming to the CTA. A lot of marketers have this habit of, like sending a single image, sale the offer. They basically replicate the same banner which is out there on their website, resize it, and then they have a CTA for the audience to click on, which is not going to, like get you anywhere, right? So the messaging is very important, personalization as much as you can, right? And like new elements like AMP elements within the email, which kind of stand out from the rest of the emails in the user's inbox.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Matthew, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a list here as well of other things that you can do to sort of target complaints if you are receiving complaints, right? So clearly, the first one is send only email to people that ask for it, right? Consent-based email gets way less complaints than unsolicited email. List hygiene is a huge one, right? A lot of people will send mail forever to an email address, and that address will get recycled. It'll bounce. It'll turn into a spam trap, and then all of a sudden, why am I having delivery problems? So making sure you have good list hygiene, good suppression, segmentation we've already discussed, right? But also segmentation in your reporting. So if you have multiple web forms, for example, that you're getting subscribers from, make sure you're tagging those subscribers and reporting on which web forms are getting the most clicks, getting the most opens, generating the most revenue, generating the most complaints. Because there could be a problem with one of your list input sources that is driving more complaints because it's not following a standard process. It's maybe been targeted by a bot that is subscribing people without their consent. But also look at the types of campaigns you're sending, right? We've talked a lot about relationship messages. We've talked a lot about commercial messages, coupons, those types of things. There could be specific types of messages you're sending. Maybe you're sending a partner promo, and those messages are driving more complaints than your own marketing. Maybe you then need to evaluate the content and the types of messages that you're sending to make sure you're living up to the consumer expectation. So there's a lot of different pieces that play there, but also there's that legislative piece that I think is important to always discuss. So, there's lots of different laws impacting email. There's lots of different laws impacting privacy and data collection. In Canada, where I am, the Canadian anti-spam legislation has a clause that basically says implied consent is only good for 24 months from the last business relationship engagement. So if I buy something from you today, there's an implied consent that lasts for 24 months from today. If I don't buy from you ever again, in 24 months, you need to stop emailing me by law, right? So there's things like that you need to understand when it comes to segmentation. So that's also why geographical segmentation is important and understanding where your consumers are. Under GDPR, there's lots of different guidelines. Some people say you should check in every 6 months to make sure that people still want to receive your emails. Maybe you want to say it's every 12 months. I would say have a policy and stick to it. Brazil has an anti-spam law. California has a privacy law that deals with data collection, data use, and data policies. So there's lots of different pieces moving when it comes to what could be driving complaints and who's going to get those complaints, right? Because if I send a complaint to the Canadian legislator, they're very active in enforcing the anti-spam legislation. So, you'd rather have me deal with an unsubscribe than the Canadian government knock on the door and say, hey, we got a whole bunch of complaints about your email. Let's have a conversation because, a $10 million fine could be crippling to a lot of brands.
I actually have a follow-up question about that. So if you're actually checking in every 6 or 12 months, should you be changing an opt-in kind of campaign? Like you have to opt in to stay in my list? Or are you going to be sending an opt-out? Like, let me know if you don't want to receive emails anymore.
Different tactics for different folks. I always prefer the opt-in because it does ensure that you have the best list that you can send to for those periods. They don't tend to perform as well, unfortunately, right? The number of people that continue to opt in, unless they're in your hyper-engaged group, aren't going to be it's not going to be 80% of your list. It might end up being more like 20 or 50% of your list. Continuing to opt in, especially if they're not finding value in your emails, right? That's going to be a good bellwether to say, are my emails actually valuable to my subscribers? Is the number of people that come back every 6 months and say, yes, I still want to continue to receive your email. Now, one thing under like the Canadian anti-spam legislation, if you get an express consent from me, which has a definition in the legislation of how to get express consent, that never expires until I unsubscribe, or there's some other action, bounce, complaint, etc., that says stop sending email to this person. So there are different things that you need to understand when it comes to sending consent-based messaging that could geographically be different between the US, Canada, Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, etc. So you need to understand your user base and different rules that apply to those individuals.
Awesome. And just since you guys actually are probably the ones like doing like your research and always checking out like cool different emails, I wonder if there are any emails that stood out for you guys as being like really good at creating, at like being inviting to people, but at the same time allowing them to make up their minds. And if that, like maybe an email that you've seen that looks like we're probably did a really good we're really good at getting to the results that they wanted to get. Do you have anything like that in mind?
I
I do
do.
have one. Both
You
of
go
us.
first, though, please. Please, you go first.
Sure. So there's this quick commerce company called Big Basket that we have in India, and so basically we have the Indian Premier League, which is one of the biggest cricket tournaments in the country, T20. Um, so at that time, like they had a campaign with a poll as to which team is going to win, and this was interactive within the email itself. So we got a lot of engagement, and like the engagement uh, notched up by 300%. So that was one of the campaigns which is like on my mind right now. This stood out.
Yeah, probably one of the best email programs I've seen in maybe the last 20 years, right? Welcome programs are always a big one. Not enough people do welcome programs well. But there's an airline here in Canada that has a loyalty program, and by joining their loyalty program, they would send you a welcome series of emails. So it was a 4-piece series. I've been a member so long, I actually don't know if they still do this. I should probably just go create account to see if they still do this. But back when I was working with them, they would send thanks for joining the program email. Here's your membership number. So they would send you your membership directly through the first email communication that you had with them so that you could start using it right away. There was no waiting for it to show up in the mail. There was no waiting for it to be created. It just arrived in your inbox the same day that you created your account. Then a couple of days later, they would send how to collect points email. So it was educational. It wasn't commercial. It wasn't selling you. It was, we're going to tell you how to collect points. Then it would send you an email that said, here's how to redeem points, because a lot of people need instructions on how to redeem points. The final email was basically like, we have a bunch of partners where you can also collect points. And then it sort of shared some of their partner offers and partner deals. And then, after 2 weeks, they put you into their normal marketing stream. Right? That's the kind of thing that builds a relationship. It's educational, it's non-promotional, and it provides immediate value to the consumer. Those are the types of programs that people need to be thinking about, and the types of segments even and automation that people should be thinking about when they're building their email programs. If you don't even do a single one-step welcome, you're already behind in the client relationship.
Awesome. Great. I actually asked that because I just thought of, as a consumer, like I obviously get a lot of emails as well. And I have some brands that I love, and they always open their emails. And some other maybe brands or businesses that I used to, be interested in before, but then at a certain point, I just lost interest. And then sometimes it would send me an email that would look really sad, like we're sad to see you go, like that kind of email. And I just wanted to say, like, let's stop doing that, you guys. I mean, it's not, we don't really have, that kind of relationship. But I feel like one other type of email that would actually get me hooked would be instead like something that would connect with like me maybe losing my VIP status or something like that. Like, do you still want to get like you still want to be one of the first ones to know of what's going on, so I would much rather go into that direction than into like the sad emoji, like sad to see you go kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think
those programs are good, but I also like the idea that is there a better channel to reach you, right? Like maybe someone is like, I don't want email anymore, send me SMS, or here's my social channel, I'll follow you on social, right? Give people the opportunity to say, oh, I didn't know I could communicate with you in these other channels as well. That also works for certain audiences to say, send me SMS instead of email, because I'm more likely to check an SMS message.
I think Netflix is bang on with their email program. Like like the type of automation they send you, pick up from where you have left off, and the recommendation engine is stitched to their email, like beautiful email program.
I also like AMP. I love AMP emails. Siri, I know you mentioned those interactive emails. Put a game in the email, put questions in the email, some type of survey that can happen in the email client. All of those things drive engagement, and they're unique sometimes to consumers. They've never seen them before, so it's a whole new experience that gets them engaged again.
Yeah. And one other thing that I've seen before that I really liked was with Finimize. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they are a newsletter on finances and investment. And they used to do so when you sign up for free for the newsletter, you get an email every day. But then as your status, like as you share with more people and they raise your status, you can choose to have just one email sent to you per week, and then that means that they get like the best information that they're sending every day, and then they send it just in one email. So which I thought it was really smart, because of course, like I don't want to maybe open an email every day, but I still want to know everything that's going on. So I feel like this FOMO if I don't open that every day. But if I get one email per week that has the most relevant stuff for me, then maybe that's more worth it, more valuable. Cool. And now we're actually getting to our closing thoughts. And I have two main questions for you guys. So the first one is, when facing a dip in open rates, what general steps should marketers follow?
Yeah, I think first off, open rates over the last several years have been greatly inflated, right? Mailbox providers have started caching images. They've started to sort of pre-populate for privacy reasons, for bandwidth reasons. So, these open rates in that 50, 60, 70% that we've seen in the past, a lot of them are being influenced by services like the Yahoo or Google Image Bot, Apple MPP. But if you do see like a huge decline in your open rate, it could mean a few different things. One, it could mean, maybe you send a message that's over 102 KB, so it's being truncated at Google, which means it's then cutting off your open beacon, so you're not even actually seeing that. That could be part of it. It could mean your messages have landed in the spam folder. Or a large portion of people have started using image blocking. It's not usually the image blocking thing. For a lot of people, it's generally either bad code or spam folder delivery that's causing the issue. And that goes back to sort of all the previous things we've talked about, right? Review your segments, review your reputation, tighten up your inactive segments and who you're talking to, and really sort of re-hone the audience that should be getting your email in order to boost your reputation back up and put those messages back in the inbox. Open rates have become a great bellwether for, is my delivery going well or not, as opposed to, are people actually engaging with my email, right? What you want to really look at for, are people engaging, comes down to sort of click rate, purchase, transaction rate. If you're not selling something, downloads, number of registrations, etc. It's going to be a much more accurate number than even click rates are being inflated by bots now. So, you kind of want to look one step beyond email now into did I achieve the goal that I want? What were my sales numbers, or my download numbers, my registration numbers, etc.
Thank you. Thank you. So, would you like to add to that one?
Yes, so like there is no one size fits all kind of debugging when it comes to diagnosing low open rates. It varies from brand to brand, and as Matthew rightly said, it could be either the image getting blocked, or the email getting truncated, or the email landing in the spam folder, right? But how do you solve for the email landing in the spam folder? It all boils down to whatever we have discussed so far. In terms of segmentation, you get your segmentation right. And in this part of the world, especially in India, uh, what we have seen is the tab placement also forms a very key uh, independent variable when it comes to open rates. If the email lies in the promotions tab versus the email lying in the primary tab, makes a lot of difference. So you need to check what went wrong with your last campaign as opposed to the other campaigns which were like clocking better open rates than the last campaign. You need to test the campaigns out and see in which tab they have been landing. What data set did you target differently? um, did you target the data set at a different time? Time also plays an integral role in deciding what kind of open rate you're clocking.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we actually have a few questions from the audience. I'm going to start with two that are related to spam complaints. So the first one says, is from Joseph Ramirez. So is it true that there is a 1 day delay between Google reported spam complaint rate dates and the actual send date?
So the reporting on Google Postmaster is typically 48 hours delayed, from 2 days
Okay.
previous. Um, Google has said they try to correlate the send date to the complaint date within Google Postmaster so that you can have a better understanding of which campaign is causing uh, delivery issues. Um, but there are a number of things that could impact that. If there's messages that sit in queue and try to deliver for 24 hours, as an example, what you think was sent today maybe delivers tomorrow. So you may see an increased spam complaint rate even though you don't send mail tomorrow. Um, so it's not a perfect science when it comes to that. But that's where you also start to look at what's your trend over a week, what's your trend over 30 days, as opposed to relying on individual day metrics.
Great, thank you. And we have another question from Anchit. Once flagged as non-compliant in terms of user reported spam, how long will it take to become compliant again? Is there a defined timeline for reset?
I think part of it depends on how fast you react, right? If you have a poor reputation for a long period of time, it takes longer to rebuild your reputation. And it also depends on the actions you take. So, several things we've talked about today when it comes to segmentation, targeting, list quality, all come into play. Uh, I've seen customers just make minor changes and things become much better for them. I've also had to work with customers that have to basically, amputate a leg in order to save the rest of their email campaign. So there's no set defined timeline. Um, but typically my advice would be, pause all mailings for 3 to 7 days and then start a warm up again with some of the segments discussed when it comes to your most active, your most engaged, and then slowly build out towards your lesser active, lesser engaged audiences. And that typically will help rebuild the reputation when you're having those types of challenges. As for timeline, reputation moves sort of on a daily basis. But if you're running at like a low reputation at Google Postmaster, it could be 2-3 weeks, could be 6 weeks. Again, it depends on the actions you take in order to make the changes. More aggressive tends to see faster change.
Wow, I'm surprised. I didn't know you have to you had to go through all of that. We have another question here. Let me see if I can understand what the question is about. It says, nowadays, there's a customer who's not ready to. No. Nowadays, customer were not ready to warm up the sender domains. How can we proceed in these cases? So if a customer isn't ready, a customer maybe a business is not ready to send warm up. Oh, they don't have a domain to send the warm ups. What is that? Can someone help? If we go into comments, there's a comment there. I'm not sure. It's a Balamurugan. If you're around, if you're.
I mean, if you're ready to send email, you should start with domain warming. It's
Okay.
This is a classic problem that we face.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many factors at play here when it comes to the source of the list, the age of the domain, the types of messages you're sending, how you're configured. This one's a really tough one, but I think, as a general rule, some of the things we talked about when it comes to domain warming, start slow and move forward from there. Transactional messaging tends to not need warming because the nature of it, it's going to be ones and twos here and there. Yeah, I think if you're not ready to start sending email, you're not ready to do warm up. There is that balancing point of you have to be ready, and then you have to go through the process, right? The only way out is through.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there are
that makes
customers
sense.
who come. There are customers who want to burn their domain name for a certain festive period, and then they want to resume email marketing the right way with warm-up. But mind you, with that practice also what happens is certain elements in your email layout get cached, like your footer, text footer. You have to revamp the entire design, entire copy, if you're following such a practice. So warm-up is a must-have.
It's essential. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and Pawan Panduranji actually opened another topic here for us. Have we covered impact of IP pool, shared versus dedicated? Does anyone want to go into that quickly? We have a few minutes.
I'll quickly take
Siri,
that.
you want to go first?
Sure. So if you're not following the right mailing practices, your mailing list is not that good, right? In that case, you will suffer on a dedicated IP because you will get a lot of spam complaints, and the rate at which the IP will come down will be much quicker than you being on a shared IP. But in an ideal case, if you're a good email marketer wherein you're sending emails to subscribed users, you're following all the list hygiene practices, the ideal setup is a dedicated IP address with a dedicated PTR record, with a dedicated envelope domain. That's what Gmail looks at, or most of the major ISPs look at. Matt, you can add to that.
I think the other balancing piece is volume, right? If you're not sending a minimum level of volume, which will vary from email service provider depending on sort of the policies at each network. But if you're not sending sort of daily 50,000 messages a day, maybe 100,000 messages a day, you're not generating enough traffic to really scale and manage reputation on a dedicated IP. So being in a shared pool might be better. There's a lot of different impacts there, but typically you have to be a big enough sender. I like to look at somewhere between 1.5 million and 2 million messages a month, sending 3 times a week at a minimum before moving to a dedicated IP. If you're not able to meet that bar, you're probably not going to see any benefit from a dedicated IP. But like I said, you could ask 6 different deliverability people, you probably get 6 different answers.
Thank you, you guys. I think we have a little time for one last question. So Joseph Ramirez mentioned, are users getting suspended when reaching over 0.3% spam rate?
What users will see is spam folder delivery. Eventually, they'll start to see bounces that are going to say things like the reputation of this domain is not good enough to send at this volume. So you're not going to necessarily be suspended. At some point, you could get blocked, especially if your rates get high enough. Your ESP may take action if your complaints are too high. But what the mailbox providers are going to do is they're just going to block the mail and not accept it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, you guys, we do have a few more questions, but I'm going to suggest that whoever has any other questions connect with Surya and Matthew on LinkedIn, maybe, so that they can keep on going on this conversation. We can also maybe create a post where you can add more questions and Matthew and Surya can go through them, if that's okay. And yeah, I just like to thank everybody for being here with us this evening, tonight, or this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are in the globe. And especially, I would love to thank you, Surya and Matthew, for being here, for sharing so much with us. It's been great talking to you guys. And honestly, I've learned so much. And I actually learned that I thought that I didn't know anything about deliverability, but I actually know some things. So this has been really fun. Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah, just thank you for having me. And if you're really interested in delivery, it's Deliverability Week. Look on LinkedIn for the hashtag Deliverability Week. There are a number of deliverability bloggers out there writing about all of the things that we talked about today. Really great content, and some really great insight and posts that you'll be able to find, and maybe even get some of the answers that we didn't get to today. So thanks for having me. It's been great.
It was a pleasure. See you guys.
Thank you, everybody.